Alright guys, today we are going to be reacting to is Vietnamese coffee actually German? Thank you so much for the support guys, thank you so much for everything you guys have done for the channel. We heading to that 4,000 subscriber. We want to get to 10,000 but that 4,000 means a lot. So make sure you click the subscribe button. We're going to simply react to this. I'm a coffee lover, I love coffee. So this will be a nice video to react to. Let's jump in and see what's going on.
Dark roast coffee mingling with the sweetness of condensed milk in perfect harmony. This is Vietnamese coffee, a vibrant cultural icon that has become an irreplaceable part of everyday life both in Vietnam and beyond. These days, Vietnam has actually become the second largest coffee producing country in the world. But hold on a second, it hasn't always been this way. In fact, Vietnam's journey to coffee success was anything but smooth. There was even a time where the country's signature brew was on the brink of extinction. So what happened? Well, what if I told you that the astonishing rescue of the Vietnamese coffee industry was thanks to one very unlikely hero, a country halfway around the world fueled by its very own kind of coffee obsession. I hope you're thoroughly confused because in this video we're diving deep into the fascinating history of Vietnamese coffee and the intricate web of connections that made it possible for you and me to sip on our freshly brewed Vietnamese coffee today. So first, let's travel back in time a little bit, namely to the late 1800s. Back then, the French Empire, with its grand colonial ambitions, waltzes into Vietnam like it's their backyard, ready to set up shop and spread their culture. And what could be a more French hot beverage than coffee? So naturally, it doesn't take very long for them to introduce the delicious bean to Vietnam. And guess what? The crop feels right at home in Vietnam's lush landscapes, and soon locals are enamored with the alluring aroma and stimulating effect of this new beverage. It's starting to catch on, and Vietnamese farmers begin cultivating coffee on a small scale, mostly to enjoy it themselves, but also to make a little extra cash on the side. But not just the Vietnamese are starting to make coffee a beloved habit. In the early 20th century, coffee in Europe transformed from a hipster brew served in snazzy cafes to the drink of the people. It starts becoming the morning must-have, the liquid hug in a mug we know it as today. Demand went through the roof and producers were scrambling to keep up. They're exploring new growing regions like Brazil, innovating varieties, improving farming technology, and let's not forget the invention of those shiny espresso machines. I mean, talk about coffee shop chic. As the coffee industry skyrocketed, the French colonizers in Vietnam naturally wanted in on the action. They wanted a piece of this caffeinated pie. And by the early 20th century, massive industrial-scale coffee plantations start appearing all around.
Especially Vietnam has a nice tropical weather kind of thing, and especially in those areas, the coffee is so good.
The country, and let's just say things started to look real good. By the 1940s, Vietnam was producing over 2,000 tons of coffee every year, which is quite a lot. With bags over bags being sent to France and the rest of Europe, coffee started becoming a major source of income for Vietnam. And inside Vietnam itself, the first coffee houses started popping up and shaping society as new and attractive meeting places for the country's intellectuals, artists, and politicians. But then the Vietnam War happens. Infrastructure is destroyed, land is ruined, herbicides wipe out soil and plant life. Millions of people are displaced. Like many parts of Vietnamese life, coffee production comes to a screeching halt. The industry is crushed. When the war finally ends, the communist government takes over and heavily regulates the coffee industry. They seize private plantations and force farmers to join collectives. The government's overall mismanagement, low investment, and outdated farming techniques were the final straw. In spite of great growing conditions, Vietnam is producing a mere 0.1% of.
Wow. That is sad, man, because Vietnam looks like a very, very nice country with a lot of potential as well, man. That's sad that you see that.
The world's coffee. The Vietnamese coffee industry is in tatters, a mere shadow of its former glory. Let's leave Vietnam behind for just a second and travel to the other end of the world, to Europe, specifically to socialist East Germany. Now, you might not think of the GDR or East Germany as a coffee-loving nation, but believe it or not, coffee played a central role in their culture. In a strict communist-ruled land with few hedonistic indulgences, coffee was the daily ritual that brought people together. But don't worry, this is not a story about Germany's love for coffee, no. It's much more about the battle between socialism and capitalism. Germans on both sides of the ideological divide love drinking coffee, but there is a catch. You see, Germany is not exactly known for its great coffee plantations. Every single bean of coffee that was consumed in Germany had to be imported, which was a massive challenge for a socialist country struggling with currency problems. While capitalist West Germany had no issues sourcing their coffee, the regime in the East had to ration it quite strictly. Coffee grounds were mostly sold in these tiny bags, each one a rare and expensive treasure.
That is not that far away from what we have today, to be honest. I mean, some of these coffee cups, bags are becoming that small.
This is actually original packaging, even though the contents are not. I did refill it with fresh coffee. And it's because of this scarcity, East Germans had to make do with a lot of cheap substitutes, like this one, also in original packaging, which were usually made from things like barley, chicory, roasted acorns, rye, that kind of stuff. But let's be honest, people didn't exactly love those, which probably explains how this one survived over half a century completely unopened. Yes. Anyway, people from West Germany knew exactly what the coffee situation across the border was, and they wanted to help out. Famously, a pack of ground coffee would become the most popular gift included in frequent care packages people from the West would regularly send to their friends and family in the socialist neighbor state. The problem was that as the years went by, coffee started becoming a symbol of the difference of quality in life between East and West.
Wow.
And that was a direct challenge to the socialist regime. It was deeply embarrassing for the government, which looked like it couldn't even provide something as basic as coffee for its people. And in the 1970s, the situation went from bad to worse. An oil crisis and a disastrous harvest in Brazil made global coffee prices soar. East Germany simply couldn't afford to import as much as they need anymore, and people were scrambling to get their hands on any amount they could find. Desperate to save face and to maintain the facade of socialism's success, the government hatched a plan. They had to make the people drink less coffee. Step one was taking most regular coffee brands in the GDR off the grocery store shelves. Only a few were left, but in their place, there would be something new, something better. The East German government recruited some of the best food scientists in the country and had them come up with a magic new blend. This new drink was called Kaffee Mix, and it was 51% terrible ground coffee, with the other 49% being a mix of peas, grains, and veggies. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? Well, let's just
That sounds horrendous.
say the people did not play along. Even in a non-democratic socialist country, people were able to vote with their wallets by simply not buying this stuff and letting it gather dust on the grocery store shelves. But that's still not all. That stuff was so bad, it literally became the butt of all jokes, and even the heavily censored East German TV stations couldn't help themselves.
Lassen Sie mich erstmal meinen Kaffee austrinken. Vielleicht darf ich Ihnen dabei was vorlesen. Ebenfalls bedient man sich neuerdings eines Kartoffelkaffees, der viel Beifall gefunden hat. Das so zubereitete Getränk ist vom ordinären Kaffee weder in Farbe noch in Geschmack zu unterscheiden. Will ich aber nicht gehört haben, was Sie vielleicht gedacht haben.
Safe to say, the government's top-down coffee experiment failed spectacularly. But wait, we're still not done. When this awful mixture actually starts clogging up coffee machines in canteens across the country, with hundreds of workers being left without any kind of coffee, not even the terrible blend, it really sealed the deal. There were legit coffee protests sparking up across East Germany, further damaging the government's reputation. Thankfully, after 2 very long and torturous years, the dreaded 50-50 mix finally disappeared, never to be seen again. The global economy recovered a bit, coffee prices stabilized, and the East German government struck deals with countries like Ethiopia and Angola, where they literally traded coffee for machines, but also arms and ammo to quench their people's thirst for coffee. Mostly what this episode did is that it reinforced this notion of capitalism winning over socialism, and the government was still in panic mode.
All right.
After it became abundantly clear that a long-term sustainable solution for communist coffee was urgently needed, the GDR cadres started scheming. Surrendering to the whims of the global market? Never again. Growing coffee in Germany? Not a chance. How about we cultivate it in a friendly country? Oh. Now we're talking. So there is Vietnam, the socialist brother nation with just the right climate. I mean, sure, their coffee industry was in total ruins, but that's nothing a little German ingenuity can't fix, is it? Long-term solutions require long-term thinking. And so the two governments struck up an ingenious partnership, signing a bunch of major agreements in the 1980s. Vietnam committed an impressive 8,000 hectares for the project. Germany provided engineers, equipment, know-how, and resources to clear the land, build infrastructure, even a new hydropower plant. Over 20,000 Vietnamese workers were relocated to the area, and Germany paid for the construction of housing, schools, and a hospital. This was an epic project of colossal proportions. It was,
You know, I have to give it to them. This is a nice gesture for both countries to just, well, East Germany, right, at that moment. You know, to get things done. I'm okay with it.
one of East Germany's most ambitious foreign collaborations ever. So, what's in it for Germany? Very simple answer: coffee forever. Vietnam committed to repay the development assistance by giving Germany half of its entire coffee harvest for the first 2 decades, and for a very good price after that. It was about to start raining these in Germany. But jokes aside, it was actually a match made in heaven. War-ravaged Vietnam benefited from the aid, while Germany prevented unrest by ensuring coffee would flow freely. And this flawless plan, it nearly succeeded. And actually for Vietnam, it sort of did. But for Germany, well, here's the plot twist and the big irony in this story. Coffee trees need a few years to grow, mature, and bear fruit. The first full harvest of Vietnamese coffee, of which the Germans would get half, was scheduled for 1990.
Wow.
And guess what happened right before that? You guessed it. The Berlin Wall fell, and soon after, East Germany was history. Some of its former citizens rejoiced, others grieved. But one thing was clear: with Germany now reunited, the coffee crisis was definitely a thing of the past.
Wunderbar. Ein Kuss für den Kaffeegenuss.
Vietnam, on the other hand, emerged as the true winner in this story. They just inherited a whole shiny new coffee industry and didn't even have to give half of their harvest to the Germans anymore. And as they say, the rest is history. This whole coffee collaboration between Vietnam and Germany coincided with major economic reforms in Vietnam, which paved the way for private entrepreneurship.
Hey, things happen, man. Things happen.
And kickstarted this new, young coffee industry. And that might still be an understatement. Today, coffee is deeply woven into the fabric of Vietnamese society. People like drinking it with sweetened condensed milk or a beaten egg, which sounds unusual, but that is actually still a remnant of the very early days of Vietnamese coffee in French colonial times, where dairy was very hard to come by. So people got creative, and I'm here for it. I love it with condensed milk. We should mention that Germany's focus on quantity and reliability means that to this day, nearly all of the coffee grown in Vietnam is actually Robusta coffee, which is a easier to grow but lower value variety. Vietnam is currently shifting gears and moving away from its GDR legacy coffee production and kind of starting to cultivate more high-value Arabica coffee. But in spite of Vietnam now being the second largest coffee producer in the entire world, you will still find the occasional old East German truck zooming around a Vietnamese coffee plantation.
Hey man, shout out David. That was a video. I'm a coffee. I love coffee. I love Puerto Rican coffee. I mean, especially with the mountains. I love it. I love it. Arab coffee, I love it too. Especially with hazelnut. My favorite. Oof, man. But coffee, Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Question, do you guys, I mean, I know it's a little bit colder over there in Germany, but do you guys have farms that you might plant your own coffee? There people do hit that in the States. They have farms here that where we cultivate our own coffee. Of course, it's modified because some of these places over here in the up north is kind of cold. But I would love to hear you guys' opinion. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one.